With 2022 now in the rearview mirror for WVU, the question on everyone's mind is, will Neal Brown return to coach the Mountaineers in 2023? The answer to that question remains to be seen, but just in case he does not, here are 25 potential names that Mountaineer Nation should keep an eye on just in case the Mountaineers do indeed end up conducting a head coaching search this offseason. Let's go. What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Jordan Cruz back here with the Country Roads webcast, and wanted to preface this video by saying I definitely believe there's a real possibility that Neal Brown returns as the West Virginia head coach in 2023. I'd say it's about a 50-50 possibility at this point, but there are certainly some signs pointing to that maybe being far more likely than we thought it would be a week or two ago. But with that being said, I have, prepared this list for quite some time, thinking that Neal Brown would be fired at season's end, and just wanted to wait till it was official to release this for you guys. But with the real possibility of Neal Brown getting one more year and returning in 2023, I wanted to go ahead and put this out just in case, because why let it go to waste? It's already been put together. So just in case Neal Brown does depart the Mountaineers, here are 25 potential names that I put together, and I organized them by 5 defensive coordinators, 5 offensive coordinators, 5 group of 5 names, and then my 10 personal favorites. That being said, this is just my list. Let me know your all's list. Do you like one of these 25 names, or is there a name that I didn't have on this list that you would really like to see West Virginia go after if they were looking for a head coach? However you're feeling, let us know down in the comments. We appreciate the engagement as we continue to try and grow the Country Roads webcast community throughout Mountaineer Nation. Give this video a like. It'll help its performance and help future videos performances here on the channel. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. That being said, let's get into it. All right, so I guess you could categorize this as my 15 honorable mention candidates, kind of in a way. The defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, and group of 5 candidates, because my main prerequisite, I guess you could say, for West Virginia in this coaching search, if there is going to be one, is I would really like to see them target a coach that has Power 5 head coaching experiences. That's something that the Mountaineers have never really brought in. So my top 10 when we get there is all pretty much coaches with Power 5 head coaching experience, save for 2 names. Actually, both those 2 names are in the top 5, though, surprisingly, but I'm that impressed with those guys. But for the most part, that's what I'd like to see the Mountaineers go after. So these first 15 names aren't ranked in any order. I've got 5 defensive coordinators, 5 offensive coordinators, 5 group of 5 names, and then we'll get into my top 10 that is ranked. But starting right here with the coordinator candidates on the defensive side, these are defensive coordinators that I think are really up and coming, that if West Virginia wanted to go after, a coordinator, these are probably the top defensive guys, in my opinion, that you would want to target. And that is Alex Grinch, currently the defensive coordinator at USC. Before that, he was at Oklahoma, turned around both of those programs. And then you've got a really young and up-and-coming name, and that's Doug Belk, a name that Mountaineer fans may be familiar with, as he has served on the West Virginia staff in recent memory towards the end of the Dana Holgorsen era there, and actually is now with Dana Holgorsen at Houston, where he is the defensive coordinator and has been doing a great job there. And a lot of people tend to believe that he's going to be a head coach in college football before long, and is on that path to do so. Then you've got Jim Knowles, of course, who came from Oklahoma State to take over at Ohio State, has done a great job of both those programs. That defense at Oklahoma State last season, a big reason that the Oklahoma State Cowboys were playing in the Big 12 championship game and nearly won it. We saw what they did to the Mountaineers in 2021, absolutely stifled them, and they utilized that defense to, get to that Big 12 championship game. And we saw Oklahoma State this season take a step back, and I think some of that is due to losing Jim Knowles, and we've seen Ohio State's defense improve under him this year. And then Mike Tressel, speaking of Ohio State, he is the nephew of former Ohio State head coach Jim Tressel, who, of course, has a relationship with current West Virginia president Gordon Gee, so there's a little bit of a connection there. But Mike Tressel is currently the defensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bearcats, and we know the success they've been having here in recent seasons. And then, of course, the top defensive coordinator candidate, who is a top candidate in some people's mind. As you see, he didn't make my personal top 10, but he is just on the cusp of it probably. He definitely would be in my top 15 if I was to expand the list to that. I feel like he would be in that, but that's Tony Gibson. We know his history with West Virginia, defensive backs coach back during the Rich Rod era, came back towards the end of the Dana Holgerson era, served as defensive coordinator and really did a good job in some years. Particularly the standout that comes to my mind is the 2014 effort against Baylor, in which West Virginia upset that high-ranked Baylor team by 14 points. He really did a great job there. And then, of course, his efforts against Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes never beating West Virginia when he was in college. Tony Gibson led those defensive efforts that the Mountaineers put up against Pat Mahomes. And he's been doing an excellent job as the defensive coordinator at NC State since he left West Virginia as well. He, of course, will be a fan favorite to come back, just being a West Virginia native from Boone County, if I'm not mistaken. So that's definitely one of the top ones there if you're talking defensive coordinator candidates. Let's take a look at the offensive coordinator candidates now, the 5 names I have there. All right, so there's the 5 names I have defensive coordinator candidates wise. Offensive coordinator candidates, here's 5 names I think the Mountaineers could look at, and that's Brian Hartline, wide receivers coach at Ohio State currently, also their passing game coordinator. So that's how he fits into the, the coordinator title, because he is the passing game coordinator there at Ohio State. And obviously we got the Gordon Gee connection here, played wide receiver for the Buckeyes while Gordon Gee was the president at Ohio State there during Gordon Gee's second tenure at Ohio State there in the early 2000s. Brian Hartline, a star receiver there. Also was a great punt returner for them. I remember watching him back, when I was younger. I played for Ohio State and have a good career, winning the NFL for some time. Since then, has come back to coach, and he's their wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator. And we know how strong the Ohio State passing game has been in recent seasons and continues to be this season. And then you got Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator at TCU. He is the brother of Lincoln Riley. The TCU offense been putting up great numbers this season, on their way to an undefeated regular season. And Garrett Riley has played a big part in that under new first-year TCU head coach Sonny Dykes. So I think he would be a guy that's on a good path to become a head coach in college football before long. Then you got Jeff Lebby, who is currently the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. He was at Ole Miss last season, and he's put up great numbers everywhere he's been throughout his career. And then Jeff Grimes, a guy that people have mentioned. He was previously at BYU, a big reason Zach Wilson put up the numbers that he did. Then came over to Baylor with Dave Aranda, kind of remade their offense there, and where he was at BYU, spreading it out more and throwing it around with Zach Wilson. At Baylor, they've really relied on the offensive line and the wide zone attack, and they call it the RVO, the reliable, violent offense. And Jeff Grimes, a former offensive line coach, really relishes, I think, in having the run game be kind of the key of that offense, and that wide zone attack and the Baylor rushing attack has been very good under his tutelage. And I think he's a guy that's on his way to becoming a head coach in college football before long. And my top candidate coordinator wise would have to be Jawan Sider, obviously because of his WVU connections. Former quarterback from the Mountaineers in the late 90s. Then came back and had 2 different coaching stints. One as a GA, then one as a running backs coach before moving on, and now is the running backs coach at Penn State as well as their co-offensive coordinator. And if the Mountaineers are looking to go the coordinator route, I think he would be a top candidate offensive-wise because of his Mountaineer connections, much like Tony Gibson will be the top candidate defensive-wise because of his WVU connections. Now let's take a look at some group of 5 candidates here. I got 5 names for these when we're talking group of 5 candidates. Rhett Lashley, current head coach at SMU, his first season there, 7-5. He's kind of from the Gus Malzahn coaching tree. He was also an offensive coordinator at SMU, Auburn, and Miami before taking over as a head coach at SMU this season. Blake Anderson, longtime head coach at Arkansas State, where he went 51-37 during his time there. Had 11 wins in 2021 at his new place, Utah State, where he's been for 2 years currently, and is 17-9. And then you got Jason Candle at Toledo, who is 52-32 there since 2015, had 11 wins in 2017 and 9 wins in 2016. Kind of took over from Matt Campbell, and we saw, a coach from Toledo come to the Big 12 and have decent success in Matt Campbell. So maybe Candle could follow that same type of route. And then, of course, you got Sean Clark, currently the head coach of Appalachian State. He's a Charleston, West Virginia native. 26-13 in his 3 years at Appalachian State, won 10 games in 2021. And my top group of 5 candidate here just barely missed out on my top 10. Looking back on it, I might even slide him there in at 10th because he's a guy that I really didn't research too much until I put this list together, but I'm really high on him now. And that's Jeff Traylor, the current head coach of UTSA. During his 3 years there, they are 29-9. 12 wins in 2021, and they've won 10 games again this season. So that's a great resume if you're looking at a group of 5 guy. And I do have 2 group of 5 guys. They're in my top 10, so they're not listed with these 5 group of 5 candidates. That being said, let's take a look here. These are my top 10 favorite candidates for head coach. If West Virginia does go looking, I do have them ranked from 10 to 1 here. And let's start at the bottom right here with number 10. And it's Kevin Sumlin. Kevin Sumlin's a coach that went 35-17 at Houston. Great record there. Then also did great in the SEC at Texas A&M with a 51-26 record. Wasn't a great fit at Arizona, I don't think, where he finished 9-20, but that's a 95-63 overall record as a head coach, so not too bad. And then you got Gary Patterson. If he would happen to want to be a head coach again, I think that would definitely be a great candidate to go after. 181-79 in his 22 seasons at TCU. So he would be my ninth favorite choice. And then eighth, Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. Wake Forest is a team that hasn't really had a lot of success in football traditionally. And last season, he led them to an 11-win season and an ACC title appearance after winning the ACC Atlantic Division. He went 29-29 at Fordham, 29-20 at Richmond, 32-31 at Bowling Green, and now is 58-53 at Wake Forest. And then my seventh favorite candidate would be David Shaw. It's 96-52 in his 12 years at Stanford, 5 double-digit win seasons, 6 wins, though, over his last 2 seasons. So back-to-back 3-win seasons. So it looks like he may be on his way out at Stanford. So that's why I think he could potentially be a candidate. And another name that I think hasn't been getting a lot of attention that maybe should is my sixth candidate here, and that's Charlie Strong. Strong currently moved into the coordinator ranks, co-defensive coordinator at Miami, but has been a head coach in the Power 5 level at the past. 37-15 at Louisville, 16-21, more of a mixed bag at Texas, but then a 21-16 record at the University of South Florida before he was let go there. So that's the bottom half of my top 10 candidates. Let's take a look at the top 5 here, which surprisingly, I know I said my kind of prerequisite that I wanted was Power 5 experience and a head coaching candidate, and I really do hope that West Virginia goes after that. So most of these guys do have that, but I do have 2 guys that do not have that, but that's just how much I am impressed with these 2 group of 5 guys. And one of them is here at 5th, and that is Jamie Chadwell at Coastal Carolina. Jamie Chadwell, I think, stands out because not 39-21 in 5 years at Coastal Carolina, a program that you had kind of never really even heard of before his tenure. They've moved up to FBS in recent years as well, but he had 11 wins in 2020, 11 wins in 2021, and then they've won 9 games so far this season as well. So a little bit sustained success there for Jamie Chadwell. But my favorite thing about Jamie Chadwell is the unique type of offense that he runs. It's kind of a blend of the RPO stuff, the kind of the Rich Rod read option stuff, and even a little bit of triple option stuff into it. It's just really unique, the style of offense that he runs. And I think at West Virginia, that's something that we need to be successful. And speaking of being impressed and offenses that have success, my number 4 candidate, yes, I know, don't hate me, it's Rich Rodriguez. Obviously, we know the connections. We know his coaching history. I'm not going to go over his record with you guys. We know what he did here at WVU in the past and the success he has. The reason he's so high on my list is because he's shown that he can have success again in coaching. 9-2 this year at Jacksonville State, won the ASUN conference, is a finalist for several Coach of the Year awards, including Coach of the Year in their conference. So, he's 172 and 121 overall in his head coaching career. So, like I said, West Virginia can do things in a unique way. What would be more unique than bringing back a guy that had maybe your best era in your program's history and seeing if he can recreate that magic? So Rich Rodriguez sitting 4th for me after a 9-2 season at Jacksonville State and leading them to a conference championship. Now, my top 3 candidates, 2 of them I never thought would be here, and the one that is the top one I absolutely never thought would be the top one. But number 3 for me is Paul Chryst, recently fired from Wisconsin. I know, so you're like, why would West Virginia go after a coach that was fired? But that's one thing with this coaching carousel. Just sometimes it's a bad fit and it doesn't work out, and that's why someone moves on. And I think that's kind of a case with Wisconsin. Was not necessarily a bad fit, but just kind of it had got stale after so many years because Paul Chryst had an absolute excellent record at Wisconsin. Before that, he was a coach at a program that we do not like too much named Pitt, but he went 19-19 there at Pitt. But during his time at Wisconsin is what's really impressive. 67-26 over his 8 years there at Wisconsin. So that's an 86-45 overall record as a head coach. 3 Big Ten West titles while he was there at Wisconsin. So those impressive stats is kind of why he snuck into my top 3 candidates here at number 3. And number 2, this almost pains pains me to have this man as my number 2 candidate, and that's Tom Herman, because I had to really put my personal feelings aside here when I was doing this list and this ranking my top 10 candidates, because personally, I really don't like Tom Herman. I'm one of those guys that's been known to call him Tom Crybaby Herman, even. But when you look at his record as a head coach, it's tough to deny. He also has the Ohio State connection, having been there in the past, which may put him in contact with, people familiar with Gordon Gee, and there could be some type of, connection there down the line if, West Virginia did have to reach out to candidates that would make him, a viable candidate for the Mountaineers. And of course, Power 5 experience, like I said. But his record at Houston, 22-4 in 2 seasons there, extremely impressive. And then at Texas, I don't think people realize he was very good there as well. 32-18 during those 4 years at Texas, including a 10-win season in 2018. So he's my number 2 candidate. And my top candidate for the West Virginia head coaching job, if the Mountaineers are searching for head coaching candidates during this offseason by chance, Curt Cignetti. Yes, the James Madison head coach. Yes, another coach with no Power 5 experience, something I didn't even think I would include in my top 10. And I sure as hell didn't think I would include at the top spot. But he is my top candidate because I'm so impressed with his resume and what he's done. And not only to mention that, of course, he is a West Virginia graduate, graduated from WVU. His dad, of course, was a coach of the Mountaineers back in the day as well. He's from the state of Pennsylvania. But how about this resume at James Madison? 41-8 over 4 seasons. 108-34 overall as a head coach. He was at some other programs before James Madison. So absolute unbelievable record as a head coach. And even just to prove that he could do it at another level, James Madison made the jump to FBS this year, and he led them to an 8-3 record in their first year ever at the FBS level this season to get to that 41-8 record that he shows over 4 seasons at James Madison. So there is my top 10 there, with Curt Cignetti rounding out the list as kind of my top choice I would like to see the Mountaineers go after. But there you have it, 25 potential names that the Mountaineers could target if they were to move on from Neal Brown. What are your thoughts there on those 25 names? 5 defensive coordinator candidates, 5 offensive coordinator candidates, 5 group of 5 candidates, and of course my top 10 personal favorites. But what about you? Who are your favorite head coaching candidates? And do you think Neal Brown should be back for the Mountaineers in 2023? Anything you want to respond to there, let us know in the comments. We really appreciate it. One more time before you head out, hit that thumbs up button, give us a like. It'll really help this video and help future videos here on the channel. And subscribe to us if you haven't already. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. As always, I'm Jorden Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.